welcome to Rocky Mountain Views. I'm your host, Martha Thompson, and today we are very honored to have as our guest Josh Fox, who is an Academy Award nominee and the producer and director of Gasland and now Gasland II. They're remarkable, remarkable films.
Thank you.
And brave films. And thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm very happy to be here.
Wow, I'm thrilled. For those who did not see the first film, Gasland, can you give me a brief overview of what was covered in that, and then we'll go into Gasland 2.
Well, you know, a lot of this just happened because, like millions of Americans, I got a knock at my door, a letter in the mail from the gas industry saying we want to lease your land. And my father got it at first, and he said, he looked at this and he said, "What is this? This looks like a scam. Like, just figure this out." And I put it aside, and I picked it up, you know, and found out that it was not your run-of-the-mill like piece of junk mail.
Right.
This was something that was very serious. I was going door to door volunteering for the Barack Obama campaign in the Pennsylvania primary, and everyone wanted to talk about gas drilling. And as I started to look into it, and neighbors of mine started to look into it, they found out that fracking uses all these toxic chemicals, and that that's an enormous water use, 2 to 9 million gallons of water,
Right.
They're different estimates, but injected into the ground, laced with these toxic chemicals, fracturing rocks thousands of feet below, and that there is a situation of air pollution at the surface that's really intense. And I started hearing all these different sides. The gas industry saying, oh, it's all going to be fine, it's just free money, it's just a fire hydrant in the middle of your field, you won't even know we're here. And to a person from Colorado, that's obviously hilarious. But we didn't know anything about this. I mean, we never had proposals in the upper Delaware River Basin, which is the watershed for New York City and Philadelphia and southern New Jersey, about 16 million people altogether. We'd never heard of this type of drilling, and there was an education process. So although my neighbors and who were rapidly becoming environmentalists were uncovering all these facts about fracking, the gas industry was saying something else. So I wanted to find out what was the truth.
Right.
And so I went to this neighboring town, not really neighboring, about 60 miles away, where they were already drilling in Pennsylvania, called Dimmick, and found the place completely overrun. Halliburton trucks swarming everywhere. People's animals were getting sick. Their children were getting sick. There was a feeling of they had lost control of this tiny town. Mm-hmm. And they discovered they could light their water on fire. They discovered there was a problem when Norma Fiorentino, who lives right on the corner of this main road, her water well spontaneously exploded, combusted on New Year's Day, 2009, just threw the whole concrete casing, everything up into the air. It was, you know, helicopter footage of it, and they all started to look at each other and go, "Well, is there something wrong with your water?" "Yeah, my washing machine turned black, and I have bubbles, and my driveway is bubbling." And they started to piece it together. So I went out there, and they got interviews with those people in central Pennsylvania. When I came back home, I realized there's no way we're going to accept this offer. But then I started to give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's find out if this is an exception, weird place, one company that's not a good company or whatever, or is this something more standard? Went out first to Arkansas, and then Colorado, and then Wyoming, down the western slope of Colorado, and then across New Mexico into Texas, Louisiana, West Virginia. Everywhere I went, same story. Everywhere I went, same story. People who had water contamination, people whose lives had been completely upended. A certain percentage of people in that area with health effects of some kind. These chemicals that they're using volatilize on the well pad, and they go up into the air. And they can also get into your water through the breakdown of the wells.
And if I remember correctly, there are 596
Oh, well,
chemicals?
that was the estimate that Theo Colborn had in 2008 or 2009 when we made the first one.
Yes.
Now she's discovered more. Here in Colorado, you have a national treasure, Theo Colborn. She's a former advisor to Congress and US EPA, and just one of our Rachel Carson.
Yes,
she's 87 years old, and I'm going to see her tomorrow. And she's got a schedule of work that's more intense than mine at 87.
Wow.
And she said to me one time, she did all this investigative work by going to bars and talking to workers and asking them for their MSDS sheets, the manufacturer safety data sheets. She discovered the chemicals, and that was her first estimate, and now she's discovered more. There are all these different products that the gas industry uses that are proprietary, they're secret, that she investigated, that are known carcinogens, are known neurotoxins, are known endocrine disruptors, which disrupt the pathway of communication between the mother and the fetus in the womb as it's developing. And those are the things that are used in this Dr. Sandra Steinweber, Theo Colborn's, I think we're picking up where she is leaving off, describes this as a carcinogen-dependent process. So when you have that industry in a massive scale in your backyard, you're going to see health effects. And we found that, anyway, so describing the first Gasland was going from bad to worse to worse to worse to worse. And the worst that I saw was definitely in that western slope of Colorado, where you had people, goat farmers, sheep farmers, people who were saying our calves are aborting and we don't have a healthy rate of new sheep and lambs, all these problems with their animals. And then a lot of people with negative health effects were living near the wells. These cases are very well documented. Laura Amos, who got a rare adrenal tumor. Rick Rolls, who has peripheral neuropathy. Dee Hoffmeister, dizziness, spent months and months in hospitals. And these people are the canaries in the coal mine, and they're the emblematic cases of what is being reported and what I heard from a lot of people investigating the industry. Those chemicals have health effects. We know what they are. The industry is not admitting that there's a relationship, but the science is starting to be done now. When you have chronic exposure to these chemicals, there will be effects.
Now, but you're saying, you know what the chemicals are now, but
we don't know,
there's also proprietary
yeah.
chemicals that...
There's a percentage, and it's of the chemicals that we don't know. And even in these disclosures that some states are saying, we're disclosing the chemicals, but
right.
For example, on the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection website, there is a list of chemicals, and the first half of them that they are disclosing: formaldehyde, benzenes, light petroleum distillates. These are bad enough. But then down the line are other things that say proprietary Halbert chemical, proprietary Schlumberger chemical, and it's on the list that way.
I don't understand that, and I don't understand how that's legal.
Well, it's legal because in 2005, the U.S. Congress, prompted by Dick Cheney and George Bush and the Bush administration, passed a law, the Energy Policy Act, and in that 1,000-page bill, there was one page which we refer to as the Halliburton loophole, yes, which specifically exempts hydraulic fracturing from the reporting requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act. So the Safe Drinking Water Act, which is there to protect Americans and protect groundwater, our primary law that protects groundwater, which states if you are injecting chemicals in the ground, you need to report those to the EPA. That's the law.
Right.
The frackers are exempt from that law because in 2005, the Bush-Cheney government and a Republican majority in Congress pushed that through, and that exemption has not been repealed. This Congress is absent in protecting Americans' health in that way.
Well, it is. And let's talk about some of there are so many stats, and as I said, I did so much research on this. You've actually caused me to learn about this, and I actually understand now a little bit about what Dr. Sandra Steingraber refers to as the well-informed futility syndrome. And I want to know how you don't suffer from that, because there is so much information and coming from so many different agencies. Mm-hmm. It's overwhelming. There's such a massive amount of money in this.
Well, I think you're talking about not being depressed. I mean, I'm not depressed because what I've seen and happening across America is this incredible movement of people. I don't even like the word movement. You know, the word movement is too activist-y. This is a gathering of people across America that I've never seen anything like it. You know, you've got folks protesting this industry in central Pennsylvania, upstate New York, and Colorado. It's, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who are meeting each other, who are working together across the states to fight off the industry and to appeal to the president, to appeal to their governors. It's really inspiring. So on one level, yeah, it's difficult and hard to think of what's happening, but on the other side, my friend Mark Ruffalo likes to say, if you're depressed, you're not doing enough. And that's, I don't want to blame anyone for being depressed. It's certainly possible to be depressed, but the antidote for it is to get active, that's for sure.
And take some control.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I was sitting at home on my couch watching this come in, which I was for the first 3 weeks when I learned all this information, paralyzed, and then I realized, oh, I have to go do something, I have to make a film, I'm a filmmaker, I can try, you know? And that was what it was. It was originally just an idea to do a 5-minute YouTube video for my neighbors, and it obviously has gone a little bit further.
A little bit more than that.
Right.
Well, when I did start to do research for this, I just began speaking to people, doing random samplings to find out, you know, what do you think about it? What is your perspective on fracking? And, you know, you said just a little while ago that it, of course, would be laughable, the information in Pennsylvania versus given what we face in Colorado. I want to tell you that...
Well, I mean that from first glance.
Yes.
Now we know it.
Now, but my experience in doing random sampling has been that people do not understand fracking. There's not a single book that I could find out of many, many bookstores in Colorado Springs on fracking. At one major bookstore, when I was asking for one, I had to explain to their employee what fracking was. So I think that between the lack of knowledge and what the industry is putting out, what the gas and petroleum industry is putting out in that information versus what is coming from people such as yourselves, how are average citizens who are not scientists, how are they to figure this out, Josh?
Well, my only answer is to watch the movies. That's why I made the movies. So you can watch Gasland 1 on Netflix. If you have Netflix, it's on Amazon. You can rent it for like $1 or $2.
Or you can watch it for free on Films for Action.
Maybe.
Yes.
I don't know that, but that's okay. And you can. It's very easy to watch that film, and it's very easy in a few months to watch Gasland 2, which is going to be on HBO on July 8th. And we want people obviously to come to the screening in Colorado Springs tonight, but we want people, and on our grassroots tour. But the real thing here is we have this broadcast on HBO, and it'll be there on July 8th into nearly 40 million homes, and it'll be on HBO Go and on demand. And so, you know, we're asking people to do house parties the night of the broadcast, so you don't just watch it alone, you watch it with your community. And we're going to provide a screening guide, and there'll be a session afterwards online that you could watch, and I'll answer some questions from around America. So, you know, that's a huge opportunity right now. We want people to use that because that's the best way that I can say, from my perspective, to be educated about it. The film, it gives you experience on the cheap. You know, you can be there without being there.
Right.
And you can learn from these, and it's really just me trying to carry the ball of the story of these people who are in those fracking areas. And there's so many thousands of people to choose from who are in that trouble zone. But what we're doing is showing you some stories that are remarkable people, unbelievable people. And in many ways, that's why I keep doing this, because I really want to tell their stories, and that's what this is about. So we want people to tune in.
Absolutely, and you do give them voice. Some of the information that blew my mind, first off, is that even in brand new wells, there's a 5% failure rate.
Yeah, right.
Can you talk about that?
Well, the gas and oil industry will say that these wells don't leak in public, in their PR.
Right.
But their own science, they've done studies. A gas well is basically a steel pipe that's surrounded by cement. That cement is supposed to protect the groundwater. But it's an inch of cement that in some cases has to extend 3 miles and not crack. There are pressures and temperature changes down there, and the cementing of a well is not a perfect thing. And with all this drilling, there are big problems. So you're rushing. 5% of the wells will fail immediately upon drilling. So that's to say there's going to be communication from the gas layers and the oil layers outwards where you don't want it to go, and that gas can migrate into aquifers. Over time, the cement barriers degrade further. If you go out on the sidewalk, you'll see cracks in the concrete. Concrete's even stronger than cement. Those cracks are channels under a huge amount of pressure for gas to explode into aquifers. And that gas can carry up all the other things that are down there, the liquids, the salts, the chemicals. All those things can migrate. And that's what we're seeing. So Over a 30-year period, 50 to 60% of those well casings will fail. The cement casings will fail. So that means that you're going to have a huge percentage. In Colorado right now, I think we have 50,000 active wells in 30 years. According to the industry's own science, that means that you're going to have 25,000 leaking wells all over Colorado. And that's what we've seen bear itself out in reality. The Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, and a lot of this stuff is in Gasland 2. Please take a look at it, it's more vivid there. Those wells leak at a 6%, newly installed wells, leakage rates are between 6 and 9%. That's what we're seeing right now. And over time, those will get worse.
Okay, now in talking about the leaks and the different government agencies that have taken a look and said, no, this has not been caused by gas drilling, and the reasoning that they've given is that it's biogenic,
well,
and not thermogenic.
Yeah, this is not
Can
really
you
true.
Can you explain that to people so that they understand?
Yeah, what the industry's done, and I don't know if it's agencies or industry, is hide behind this idea that biogenic, there's two different kinds of gas. There's biogenic methane, there's thermogenic methane, roughly. And the thermogenic methane is the methane that they're drilling for most often in hydraulic fracturing. But what we know is in all those cases in Pennsylvania, the majority of them are thermogenic gas. And this is a smokescreen. But at the same time, we also know from industry science that drilling can liberate both kinds of gas, which is to say, you're drilling through a pocket of biogenic gas on your way down to the thermogenic gas. Your biogenic gas can migrate, your thermogenic gas can migrate. Your thermogenic gas can push up and cause the biogenic gas to migrate first, and then the composition of it can change. It's a smoking gun when you have the same kind of gas down there that's in the gas formation, thousands of feet down, as in the water well. But at the same time, that biogenic gas can also be migrated, forced into an aquifer by the drilling process, because you're connecting all those layers. So it's really an unfair argument, and it's equivalent to again another misinformation campaign on behalf of the industry, creating doubt. Which, I mean, it's a little bit absurd. This water could be lit on fire naturally. And that's what they're going out and saying. But the point is not necessarily to believe their point of view. It's also just to create this debate and to create an argument. And then in that argument, you can pretend that the science is not there. The science is there.
But it is a tool that the industry has been using to avoid culpability.
Well, they've done this. They're following the exact same playbook as the tobacco industry did. In fact, they've hired the same PR firm that the tobacco industry hired when they were trying to confuse people about the dangers of cigarettes and the addictive nature of nicotine. And that PR firm, Hill & Knowlton, now represents the gas industry. And their strategy has been to confuse, to misinform, to deliberately go out there and create a false debate, to sponsor science at universities, which will directly counter, we call it fracademia. So the tobacco industry used to do this, and a lot of those fracademics got caught. In Buffalo, there was a whole department that was sponsored by oil and gas in order to try to undo research that legitimate scientists were doing. The same thing happened at the University of Texas at Austin. They got caught, and they came out and said, well, actually our work isn't credible. Of course it's not, because it's sponsored by oil and gas, and the point of it is to deliberately try to confuse people and somehow deflect the actual science that's being done, especially in the media.
That's incredible. Well, speaking of what PR firms are doing, I'm actually going to read this. The psychology being used by the gas and petroleum industry is even going so far as to hire PSYOPs officers using techniques such as those used in Iraq and Afghanistan against landowners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, in our film, we go into reporting that was done in Texas by the Oil and Gas Accountability Project.
Yes.
By Texas Sharon Wilson, one of the top bloggers in Texas. She was given a pass to an oil and gas industry conference in which she observed and recorded spokespeople for Range Resources, Anadarko, and Chesapeake, speaking about how they were dealing with PR. Range Resources admitted to hiring former PSYOPs officers, psychological operations officers who were trained in Afghanistan, or I think Iraq and Afghanistan, or both, or either. And they were using those techniques to create local laws and local ordinances in Pennsylvania and to try to mess with the landowners who are fighting the gas industry in PA. Chesapeake, their representative, described people fighting the gas industry, landowners, normal Americans, as an insurgency.
I read that.
And the representative from Anadarko said that the gas industry should be reading the counterinsurgency manual from the I guess, the military. And that's well documented. So they have been caught, yes, again, doing things that are very nefarious and shady to try to mess with people, mess with their minds. You know.
That's really frightening.
Well, yes, I would agree.
Okay. Another thing that the industry speaks of is that I think even as much as 95% of what they're using is only water and sand.
Right. Well,
Let's talk about the math on that one.
sure. Well, if you have a glass of water that has 2% benzene in it, you're going to drink it.
Right?
So here's the thing. They do a lot of these things to tell you something that sounds really good, and it actually in reality doesn't make sense. There was a really popular one where they were saying all the things that we're using in fracking are just common household items that you find under your kitchen sink. And, you know, we use guar gum, which is in ice cream. And I said, well, okay. Take all the things that are under your kitchen sink, like the Drano and the Lysol, and you know, these are the types of things, disinfectants, biocides, and so on. And then go in your refrigerator and get your ice cream out and make yourself a sundae that has the ice cream and those Lysol on top of it, and then have it. Sounds great. You know? So you hear a lot of this stuff that's, again, deliberately designed to make it sound benign, but it's not.
No, it's not at all. This is what actually we spoke of right before we started filming, the article in EcoWatch. In 1980, the Colorado Supreme Court made a decision stating that the oil and gas development was so important to the state and nation that any attempt to deny the industry access to the city proper, and in this instance they're referring to Greeley, would pose a threat to national security. It's this decision that's allowing the oil and gas industry to invade cities at will across the state.
Well, I don't know about this particular decision, but what I do know is that it's not really, the oil and gas industry does get special treatment at the government level within the state and federal. There's no question about that. The simple fact that they're exempt from our pillars of environmental law should tell you that. And at the same time, we know that this is about their profits. These are multinational corporations. They're coming in to exploit a resource at the detriment to Americans' health. And for some reason, that's allowed to occur. It has something to do with the way they influence our political system. And that is also documented, and we talk about that a lot in Gasland too. They're a tremendous influence on the political system.
Well, absolutely. The lobbyists are pretty much taken over at this point.
Yeah.
So
citizens have to be just as adamant and just as strong in going and pleading their case right now.
Super. Okay. Considering the fact that we are not mainstream media, my husband and I really can say and do anything we want on this show. I wanted to give you a forum to be able to say something that perhaps you've not been able to say on national media, or maybe has been edited out. This is your moment.
To be honest, when I'm asked a question, I just basically tell the truth.
Have you not been edited at all? Has that been pretty?
The media's been really good and very responsive to this film, and I don't have a lot of complaints in terms of what I've been able to say and do. What bothers me a little bit is when they're not checking out the other side and whether or not they're being honest. But you know, I am grateful for the opportunity. I do feel like in general what I'm trying to do here is just be an investigator and tell people what I have seen, what I've heard, and then what is supportable by the science and the data. So there aren't any big pronouncements that I want to make. I'm just sitting here and trying to make it what is very, very clear on the ground, clear to people who are watching these films. So thanks.
Oh, thank you. There's tremendous information in your films, as I said. I've actually watched Gasland, the first Gasland, at least 5 times. Because, again, if you're not a scientist, it's mind-blowing. It's hard to get your head wrapped around the fact that it's even happening. So I'm sure I'll be watching Gasland too several times as well.
That's great.
Tonight,
Sounds like a great segue into pitching people tonight and then getting some.
Yep, so tonight you're going to be...
Oh, well, I actually don't know where we're going to be. We're here in Colorado Springs, I know that much. Where is the film tonight?
It's at the Galgly Event Center.
Galagly? How do you spell that?
Galleogy, I believe.
You know what, we should have had this prepared. How does it spell? Galagly Event Center. But,
At
to find out
CC.
about it, you can sign up for tickets at our website, gaslandthemovie.com.
And the admissions price is amazing.
Yeah.
It's free. It's free. And there's going to be a Q&A time. So
Q&A,
people can
and we're going
talk
to
to you.
have one of the greatest banjo players on the face of the planet, Joe Scroggins. He's going to be there to play before the movie and maybe a little bit afterwards. And we have Weston Wilson and other great local leaders who are going to be giving people a chance to understand how to participate and work on it.
And you'll play banjo as well?
I will.
I'm hoping.
I probably will if I'm not. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Wonderful.
All right. I encourage everybody to do your own research. Watch the films. Get online. Learn. I know some of it's mind-numbing because there's a lot of science involved in this, but it's worth your time. Our lives are at stake over this, so please pay attention. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. All right, sure.
Yeah.